What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the second album by rap rock band Crazy Town. Basically, this album is called Darkhorse, and it came out in the fall of 2002. Now, the thing about this album is they had a hit album. Their first album was a pretty big hit album because of the song Butterfly. That album was called The Gifted Game, and it came out in 1999. And it had like a lot of slow burn kind of energy. Like Gifted Game came out in 1999, but Butterfly crested throughout like the spring and summer of 2001. It was a huge song around that time, so they really charted quite a while throughout like the late 90s and early 2000s. But labels kind of wanted them to have a follow-up single to Butterfly, and the single that they dropped that followed up Butterfly off of the Gifted Game was called Revolving Door, and that song didn't really do that well. Did decently in Europe, but it didn't do well in the United States, and then they just kind of pulled promotion for the album. So it's too bad that Revolving Door didn't do better. But Crazy Town talked about like the band broke up a few months after this album, Darkhorse, came out just because the labels wanted them to have like the pressure from the labels of wanting them to follow up Butterfly just kind of had gave them problems. That's kind of the concept about it. And to kind of say there are some, this is a hit album that's going to get a pretty high score, but I can see the concept as to why Crazy Town didn't catch on more with this particular album, just because the two singles kind of have a lot more lazy and mellow kind of malaise about them. So if you're looking for like another riveting, snappy, up-tempo kind of song like Butterfly or something like that off of the Gifted Game, it's not really on that in terms of the singles. These are just a lot more kind of like smoky, kind of hazy, just malaise kind of songs that just have a lot more laziness and lambentness kind of about them. So it just doesn't have the snappy kind of radio ready feel of Butterfly. But there are some good songs on here, and I would have to say I do support this album quite a bit. I think it's a worthy follow up to Gifted Game, even if like the bite and I mean they had like 5 or 6 singles on the Gifted Game from 1999, but just to kind of say this one was just kind of hurried along and it just kind of phased out so quickly, which is really too bad because this is a pretty good album. There are some great riffs on here and some great new metal songs. That's kind of the thing about new metal in late 2002. I mean, yeah, you had folks like Trapped and POD and some of those type folks, and like this group, Crazy Town, and Korn was doing well in 2002 and stuff like that. But this is right around the time when new metal was this was right around the time when new metal was getting ready to phase out. Just between like the spring and summer of 2003, folks eventually got tired of it. I don't know if they moved on to like post grunge or that type of stuff, but there just were some folks like Nickelback and folks like them that kind of had a lot more malaise about it that just kind of worked for a while. Just that kind of dominated throughout. Alternative metal is pretty big in like the 2000s also, so it just kind of felt like new metal just kind of ran its course a little bit. But this is an album that did have quite a bit of new metal on here, but it just wasn't as dominant as it was in 1999. But it's still a good album. This is still pretty excellent. So I'll go ahead and talk about the singles on here. The first single is Drowning, and this is a mellow post-grunge like malaise of a song. I would say it's more hazy and makeshift than Butterfly is, but it's marketable. I definitely feel like this is a pretty charming and marketable song. This really kind of has some of those alternative metal type feels towards it. It's just in rap, so this is very much a new metal song, but it is the production really feels like post-grunge as far as that kind of goes. Just a good hit single. But this is I mean, for folks who come to this album thinking that they're going to get another hit like Butterfly, this is kind of one that's just kind of more car and just after hours, day after hours malaise for makeshift as far as that kind of goes. It's a good simmering one. It's not a bright kind of shining one like Butterfly and Toxic and some of those songs off the Gifted Game, but it's kind of a malaise one. It's just kind of a lambent kind of charmer that just kind of works for just like some lazy after hours in the summer as far as that kind of goes. I do like this song. Hurt You So Bad is the second single, and this is a getting ready to pop off gem. I would say it's an exhilarating single for a night, and it's some solid makeshift. And as a bonus, this has Rivers Cuomo from Weezer on the guitar work. So this is definitely a pretty good one. This just has a lot more Lays kind of energy. This one's a little bit more kind of after hours ready. I feel like this one's more makeshift, where I feel like Drowning is definitely more of like a smoke session, just kind of malaise, just kind of city stepping, just kind of in a more kind of casual kind of sense and regular vanilla kind of day. I feel like this one's a little bit kind of more work prone, and this is probably the one that you might hear on the radio. Despite the fact that Drowning was the only single that charted, I feel like this one's just a little bit more crafted for blue collar, just has that more kind of snappy, kind of factory made tempo about it. But they're both good. These are both two stock singles just to kind of hear and like a lot of blue collar malaise. So they calmed down quite a bit. That's kind of the concept, is just I think them being on top of the world in 2001, 2000 with Butterfly and some of those type songs. I just kind of think that they just kind of calmed down a bit and just kind of made these factory kind of songs that just were a lot more just bubblers and charmers more so than full blown ravenous raucous kind of songs. But they do have some of those on here. Yeah, there are 13 songs on this album, and out of those 13, I wound up recommending 8.5. So I'll go ahead and recommend those songs. Those 8.5 songs would be Drowning, Hurt You So Bad, Candy Coated, Waste of My Time, Change, Take It to the Bridge, Skull and Stars, Them Days, and the Almost song is Sorry. So the reason Sorry is the Almost song, this is kind of a sulking, bickering kind of song that has radio ready makeshift bite, I would say. It's glum and the beat is palatable, but I kind of feel like this one, if you're not really in an apologetic mood, it just doesn't quite have the same bite as far as that kind of goes. This is kind of more of a malaise one. This is another makeshift song, kind of like Drowning and Hurt You So Bad, that just works good for blue collar in a sense. It's very presentable and radio ready, but it just kind of has like that wooziness about it, and it works as far as that kind of goes. The productions is definitely pretty interesting on here, but I just feel like just the more composition of the song makes it less affable in terms of how that kind of goes. Just kind of one that just doesn't have the right concoction as far as listening to it in different time periods. But Candy Coated is a low key summer haze of a song. It's a mellow cruise of a bop, and it simmers with like some bubbling charm. I would definitely say this one just has a very low key and just kind of this simmering kind of beat on here that just works extremely well. I definitely like the feel and approach of this one. It's just kind of another lazed and malaise kind of song compared to some of these other ones on here, but I like the concept of getting it. It's kind of a decent album cut, solid album cut. It's just kind of one that you'd listen to in just like a solid kind of backyard smoke session, just low key kind of simmering summer haze as far as that kind of goes. Just some real chocolate tie and just purple haze type stuff to really smoke to and that sort of thing. This would definitely have to say it's kind of like when you think of Candy Coated, you think of like candy coated cars and that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. It's a real kind of cruise around kind of song, just with that lazy kind of summer feel. This kind of works as like a good highlight. There are some rowdy songs on here, like Waste of My Time is kind of a rowdy hangout sleaze, I would say. It's a venting song that works well, and it's just got some solid new metal kind of energy. This is definitely a pretty good bubbler on here. There's another one that's like that on here, like Take It to the Bridge, which I'll go ahead and talk about. Take It to the Bridge is another kind of bubbling, jivey hangout thriller. It's a solid nightclub sleaze of a song, and it's just got some catchy raucousness. So both these songs, Wasted My Time and Take It to the Bridge, are some of the more rowdy type songs on here that folks were probably looking for from Crazy Town, because they are rap rock. A lot of times they have a lot more alternative metal type feels, just that sort of stuff. They're not really like a true metal band in terms of like this the raucous kind of headbanging kind of energy, but they do have a couple ones on here. But I just would say this album as a whole is just a lot less ravenous as compared to The Gift of Game. I mean, there's not as much to really grade Crazy Town by because they don't have a ton of content, but I just would have to say that for the most part, this is relatively more mellow and relaxed. They just have a lot more kind of smoke several to the head type feel about it. They just have a lot more smoke several swishers to the head type feel of it, more so than like the concept of like the way that they were in 1999. But it's just kind of the concept. I do like some of this mellow malaise, but it's just something to know going in that most of the time they're not that turned up on here. But they do have some ones. It's rowdy, but it's not ravenous, I would have to say. That's kind of the concept about it. Change is a really emphatic song. This is a makeshift ruminating bop. I would say it's an overcast radio ready gem for introspection, and it has personality. This is definitely one that's just kind of more thought provoking and more introspective as far as that kind of goes, but it pulls off the vibes pretty well. Just like I was saying before, how this album doesn't have a ton of boilers and kind of take your shirt off kind of ravenous kind of songs. This is an example one that's more low key and more mellow, but it just works real well. It's just kind of a more ruminating kind of one, just for thought provoking and that sort of thing, but it pulls it off. This is a good example of that. And then another one that's kind of similar to Change, but not quite as introspective, is Skull and Stars. This is a hop and bop kind of casual hit. It's very vanilla new metal bop, I would say, and it's got some mellow, glazy charm about it. This is just a definite good one with the malaise beat on here. This one's not an immediate kind of boiler in terms of like the production, but I just kind of like the kind of offhanded kind of production that it has. It's very similar to Drowning and Sorry. Both of those kind of makeshift songs. This just kind of has like a makeshift feel about it, but it's not makeshift. I feel like this is just kind of more of a recreational kind of song, but it just kind of has the concept of the production composition about it. Just makes it feel more blue collar, despite the fact that this is just a very casual kind of hit for new metal. So it's kind of an interesting valve. I do like this song quite a bit. And then Them Days kind of takes it back to like the Gift of Game. This is definitely an evening stepper, and it has thrill for like some candid outings. I would say it's more riveting and noisy, and that works really well. So it's just riveting and noisy, and that just works very well. So I would have to say this is another charming one, like Wasting My Time, Take It to the Bridge, and Them Days are all good ones as far as just having some of those take your shirt off kind of vibes about it. This is definitely one from like their 90s kind of days as far as that kind of goes, but there's just not an overabundance of songs like this. I just feel like definitely this album, to kind of talk about some some of the stuff on here. Like to talk about the 4 songs I didn't enjoy, like the 4 songs Decorated, Battle Cry, Beautiful, and You're the One. Like some of these just didn't add up quite as well. Like I felt like You're the One just had one of the worst beats on the album. That was just kind of a poor one that just was not very melodic to listen to. Beautiful was trying to be like another version of Change, is that same kind of introspection, but this did not pull it off nearly as well. And Battle Cry was another riveting song that just really had a poor riff on there that just was not quite as riveting in the energy and the execution as to how it did it. And I just really didn't like Decorated just because it was just kind of a messy kind of beat that was just all over the place that just kind of had a bad concoction of how to handle it. So those are just kind of some ones. But this is a good album. This is definitely a solid one. In some cases, I might say I like this album better than I like The Gifted Game. I feel like The Gifted Game just has more riveting, kind of raucous kind of energy. They just felt a lot more wild and noisy on that particular album, but there is some good makeshift and malaise on here. And I feel like the blue collar pitch that they tried out this time works pretty well for them. It's not bad. And I feel like the concept of this, the new tricks that they tried are actually pretty affable and charming. I just think that's kind of the concept about it. They did have like some new metal that pulled off like some post grunge kind of tricks and it worked. I think that's kind of the concept. They just don't have a song like Butterfly this time, and the singles are just a lot more lazy and malaise compared to some of the stuff that you'd probably expect when you think of like a one-hit wonder. But that's always the problem with the one-hit wonders. People come to them wanting like one particular type of song, and when they don't get it, they just rebuke it and that sort of thing. It's just, I don't recommend rebuking this project just because it does have some gems on here. Production is great. They do have some malaise, kind of lazy ones that just work extremely well. And it's just awesome to kind of see. And it's just a charmer in like a very low key kind of way. I just think the concept about it's just a slow burn and kind of like sleeping giant of a project. So I'm going to give this album, me liking 8.5 songs out of 13. I'm going to give this album like an 8.75 out of 10. If I had liked Sorry just a little bit more, if I wasn't on the fence about that song, I'd give this album a 9 because it's just that good. But I just would have to say that's kind of thing. The social score, though, I'm going to give like a 7.75. I'm going to give the social score a 7.75 because I do kind of feel like some of this lazy energy, they probably could have used a few more hits as far as that's kind of concerned. It just felt very, I don't want to say rushed, but it just kind of felt through the motions somewhat. And this kind of felt like they were sleeping. I don't want to say that this felt rushed, but it just kind of felt like they were sleepwalking through the motions of this particular album, just between new metal not charting as heavily as it used to, and just things like that. Just the pressure of the labels wanting them to follow up Butterfly just kind of made for a bad place and pitch as far as the mood of how the creation's album kind of went. But there are some gems on here, but they're just very lazy. That's just kind of the concept. It's just a very kind of this like mellow kind of project the whole way through for the most part, minus like 2 or 3 hits, on this particular project. So that's just kind of the thing. But it is some good stuff. It's just kind of more acquired taste. In terms of the future, like there is one more album by Crazy Town that I'm going to get to at some point, and that's the Brimstone Sluggers from 2015. But they did break up in 2003 after this album. Then they came back years later, and I reviewed Shifty Shell Shock's Happy Lovesick album back in January, so you can check out that review also. But I'm going to go ahead and review Brimstone Sluggers at some stage, but this is a pretty solid album here, so don't overlook this. If you're looking for another Butterfly and are disappointed, don't think this album blows, because it really doesn't.